Welcome to another episode of Growth Hacker TV. I'm Bronson Taylor, and today I have Ankur Nagpal with us. Ankur, thanks for coming on the program.
No worries. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a really exciting talk, basically because you're the largest individual developer in the history of the Facebook platform with over 10,000 applications. That's not a typo, 10,000 applications, and a reach of upwards of 200 million users. And you're also an online educator that teaches people how to hack App Store growth, and I know our audience is going to love that because they've specifically asked me for more mobile stuff. So I think we're going to have a really good talk.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, and so let's jump in here. First, I want to talk about the Facebook stuff, and not necessarily because I think our audience is trying to hack Facebook, but because the things we're going to talk about right here, the psychology behind them is going to be applicable to so many things.
Yep.
Whether it's an app in the App Store, whether it's a SaaS application on the web, whatever it is, the psychology here goes deep. So I want to kind of try to connect the dots for people as we talk through that, and then we'll get to more of the mobile stuff, and we'll have to kind of change gears in the middle to talk about that. So first, let's talk about
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about 5 Facebook hacks that have kind of served you well. The first one is friends with benefits. So tell me what that is. What is that hack?
Okay, so I think this started, I want to say back when I was working on the Facebook platform. There were a lot of other people doing similar stuff. I mean, virality was the rage at the time. You know, literally entire companies were built and died in a matter of months. You know, I think that when you think about growth, higher level, I think that's kind of a very important era when it came to online growth, because it's the first time businesses were truly able, to reach tens of millions of people overnight. So I was one amongst the many, working, building initially useful applications on Facebook. But I soon realized that didn't really work. Like, they were a pain in the ass to grow. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I was in college at the time. I was like, okay, let me make money on the side. So we started dabbling in viral games, viral applications. And one of the first applications I built was a gift app creator where you send your friends gifts. And gifts were essentially essentially an application whose sole purpose was to send invites to the application. Very, very stupid.
and the gift is like an image.
It's just an image.
It's just a JPEG or something.
Yeah, exactly. And that wasn't working initially for me. And I saw it working for some of my competitors. Mm-hmm. And on the surface, I was like, I can't get what I'm doing wrong. And that's when it hit me that we were using the default Facebook friend inviter at the time, which, I mean, that's as rookie as it gets when it comes to the Facebook platform. I mean, you have all this social data. And that kind of began a long process of experimenting with how you can take a user's, 500 to 1,000 friends and choose the best friends they have. And I mean, that did absurdly well. Like, you could 2 to 4x acceptance rates just by that one simple step.
All right, so let's break this down to make sure it's really clear what we're talking about here. So the Facebook kind of default inviter is when you tell Facebook, yeah, I want to invite my friends, it pops up a little modal window, and it just has all your friends in it in alphabetical order. It starts with A's, goes to the Z's, and there's all your friends that you can invite. And that's broken. Why? Why is that default loader not the right one?
So a quick caveat in the sense that, I mean, I don't know if they've changed it in the last 3 months. I think the last time I saw it, they had a slightly modified version where you have friends that use the application and friends that don't. So that's one level of categorization, but it still used to be alphabetic. I'm not sure what it was now. Yeah. But at the time, yeah, it was very broken. I mean, as someone whose name was started with A, I can tell you I got a lot more invites than other people.
Gotcha.
And it did, yeah. I mean, and the kind of user psychology for a lot of people is, okay, I want to, unlock whatever it is I am unlocking by sending invites. Let me just select the first 20 people. Boom, 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 boom. Done. Sent. Always goes to the same 20, most of whom don't care. Especially when you're dealing with the stuff that we did, where the social connection mattered. Like, we had a gifting app, right? If you're sending a hug to someone you're sending a hug to your mom, my mom's going to click any invite I send her. It doesn't matter what I send her. She's like, oh my God, my son sent me something. Let me see what it is. So it was a world of difference. I mean, we even had a friend quiz where you answered questions about your friends. So the way you chose the friends that we asked questions about was the reason we were successful, and everyone that came after us, and trust me, there are at least 20 companies that tried to clone us. Only one other company actually got success in the US market, and that was Badoo.
Yeah.
But everyone else, they just did not do what we were doing on the back end, choosing friends smartly.
Gotcha. So when you show them a pop-up box of friends to choose from, it's their real friends based on kind of an algorithm you guys have written. Yep. And then they're inviting people that actually care to get the invite. So let me ask you this. Did the number of invites sent go down or up when you change how they selected their friends?
It actually went down a little, like not substantially, but which was interesting, right? Intuitively, I would have imagined would have sent more invites because they recognized the people they were sending it to. The number of invites went down. In a couple of cases, they went up, but there was not the overall was not too much conclusive data. It definitely did not lead to a big increase, but the acceptance rates went up 200 to 400%.
So that's really where it happened, is that they sent out less invites overall, but they were higher quality invites, which means more acceptance, and then you have a better chance of actually getting over the viral threshold just because of the way you wrote this algorithm. And you based it on who the real friends are, which I think you said before it was based on photos they were tagged in with their friends, because if you're tagged in photos with your friends, they're your real friends.
Yep. That's easily the biggest indicator. I mean, we use secondary indicators like who posts on your wall, who likes your stuff. Mutual friends, we tried, it didn't work super well. But photo tags worked absurdly well. In fact, we even devised a separate standalone app once that was called Best Friend Predictor. And all it did was it read the photo tag. It's like, I predict these are your 10 best friends. And people were like, holy shit, that's freaky, man. It freaked them out. And that was an example of an application that grew to 500,000 people in 6 hours, just based off a single feed story. It was not that aggressive. It just gave them the option to post it to their feed. So just each user was posting one feed story at most, on average 0.6 feed stories, and close to 500,000 people in half a day.
Wow, that's incredible. And like I said, I really want to go into the psychology to connect the dots for people, because it's not just, oh, I'm not building on Facebook, so this is irrelevant. The point is, we're all trying to imitate the viral loops that we see. We all want to be like Dropbox. We all want to be like fill in the blank. But the point is, make sure the invites are really high quality. So however your system's built, whatever thing you're building, make sure the person they're typing in to invite, however you phrase it or word it or present it to them, gets you the highest quality invite. So even if they send less of them, more of them get accepted because they actually know each other. So use whatever signals you have at your disposal, whether it's APIs, whether it's stuff in, data in your own application. Use whatever signals you can to send out high quality invites, and then you got a better chance of getting the K close to 1.
Abstracting out one level further, I think the high level advice I give people based on this is see what you can do on the receive side. Instead of sending out more communication in general, you always get better returns to scale by optimizing acceptance rates. Like, it is possible to, get people to accept 2 times as many requests, 4 times as many emails, but it's really hard to get someone to send 4 times more emails, right? It's such an inefficient way of growth. Like the most efficient way of growth is first fix the receiving side. Try and maximize the percentage of invites accepted. Might it be a text message, an email, whatever it is, before focusing on sending more stuff.
It reminded me of kind of the retention versus acquisition discussion. And, we go back and forth. What's more important, getting people on top of the funnel or retaining them and making sure the conversion rates are good? It's almost the exact same thing, but narrowed down to a viral loop. Make sure the acceptance is high, and then worry about how many invites they send out.
Absolutely.
That's great. And then the next thing, I love this one, partly because I'm reading the book right now called Scarcity. So it's teaching me all kinds of stuff about scarcity. But the hack you have is called artificial scarcity. What is artificial scarcity? How do you use that?
Artificial scarcity, kind of goes back to what I remember in college economics, where in economics you buy a commodity, then make it scarce, drive up prices. It's the same thing applied to psychology. Essentially, as human beings, we value anything that we perceive to be scarce. And scarcity does not have to be authentic. So again, used it on Facebook with invites. The way I successfully got people to send more invites was putting a hard cap on the number of invites they actually could send.
Just told them you can't send over a certain amount.
You can only
arbitrarily, even though it would help you if they did.
Yep, absolutely. And that's kind of the ethical part of it. You don't have to enforce it. I know people that have done that and not enforced it. The one thing that I think is pretty important, which adds to your credibility, is just displaying visual feedback. Like, what was really critical, like saying you can send 20 hugs today, worked kind of well, but what really made it work well is every time they sent a hug, they saw that number change. Even more when we had like a program
of it.
Exactly. Just like giving them a visual indicator. I don't know why. Like, people tend to believe a visual indicator. Like, I think the chances of it being true are far greater just because it's depicted with nice graphics.
Yeah. No, that's great. And so let's kind of connect the dots on this one, how people can use it when they're not in Facebook. Some of the ideas I had is just, if you have a time limit on something, you can make scarcity of time. You have 2 days to do this. You have 4 hours to do that. Scarcity of invites. You can only invite 5 people. I think about Gmail when they first came out. You have this many invites. It's in their interest to give you 1 million invites. But instead they're like, hey, you get 20. And now all of a sudden they're meaningful. These invites matter and everybody wants one. So whatever your product is, think about all the different aspects of it and think, how can I make it scarce? Maybe you have a SaaS product and you say, okay, only 3 people can sign up a day. Maybe you're only getting 2 signups a day, but you say only 3 can sign up a day. Now all of a sudden everybody wants in when they see that maybe, you know?
Absolutely. And I mean, there's so many companies that have recently been founded on the premise of scarcity of some kind, right? Groupon, that was a big driving factor in their growth. I mean, they're essentially selling scarcity. I can't remember, I was seeing Robinhood, the stock trading platform, another waitlist, invite only. Almost every startup right now that's successful is using scarcity in some form or the other.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a very basic principle, but something that I think you should absolutely be thinking about how you can best employ it.
Yeah, I think there should be some scarcity somewhere in your product, almost no matter what you're doing. It's just, you got to be creative, but you can put it in there and it'll work. And the next thing is having multiple points.
One quick last note on scarcity is, and this comes more as a user rather than a growth hacker, is too many people have abused it. So there's always a fine balance. I mean, it's you don't want to call it scarcity every time to the point that people stop taking you seriously. I mean, it definitely works to a degree, but not taking specific names. But I mean, there's an online education company that sends out 75% discounts 2 or 3 times a month, right? And at a certain point, I mean, that cannibalizes your existing market pretty badly when people tend to just have a lower brand value based on frequent scarcity that's entirely artificial, and people tell how artificial it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to introduce it in quantities that make sense for you. But definitely play with it. Test it. See how it works. And like I was going to say, the next thing is having multiple points of entry. And I like this one. What does it mean to have multiple points of entry?
So multiple points of entry is, again, something that I discovered almost accidentally. It was not something by design, but it was so powerful first on Facebook, and then later on you see how other companies are using it now. Essentially, see if you can break down what you have. If you can break down your product or your application into smaller subunits that people are more likely to add. So on Facebook, there was a company that we competed with that was called Brainfall Personality Quizzes, and they had more content than us, maybe even better content than us. They were first to market, yet we beat them just by breaking down a fraction of their content into individual applications.
It's like branded applications. So instead of just being personality quizzes in general, you would have a quiz on what?
Anything. I mean, for instance, you're much more likely to add an application called Dr. Phil's personality test than add Brainfall personality quizzes, right?
Gotcha.
You just if you have so many applications, it's very possible that one specific idea will catch the interest of someone the way a generic title never will.
Yeah.
It applied to gifting, for instance. There's a popular application called Free Gifts, but send your friends a Christmas tree very frequently did better than free gifts around Christmas time, because someone would not add free gifts that adds send your friends a Christmas tree.
The context is right. It's meaningful to them. It has the keyword they want in it for that time in their life for whatever reason. And so they're apt to do something with it where the generic brand may not be meaningful, right?
Precisely. And obviously, again, this seems very Facebook specific, but a lot of this can be applied to other companies. For instance, whenever you give users invites, I see too many companies, kind of using the same generic invite, but it's so easy to customize the invite landing page. And I mean, conversion always goes up, I mean, it can start small with, a picture of the person that invited you, but ideally, if you are, depending on the context of your product, maybe you guys are sharing a group or whatever, you invite them to join that group. Like Dropbox invites you to join a folder, not just Dropbox itself.
I gotcha. Yeah, a light bulb just went off in my head when you started saying that stuff that I hadn't thought about. Because when somebody signs up, we pull their Twitter handle, which means we have their image, which means we could create a landing page for our referral system with their friend's image on it saying, this person invited you with a picture. And I've never even thought to do that. That's great.
It's so powerful. I mean, for about 2 months, maybe 2 to 3 months, the entire world of Facebook advertising exploded. I mean, this was later proven to be illegal, but what they did is they injected images of friends in the banners, and that CPMs went up 4 to 5x overnight. Like, it was unreal. Like, everyone started making so much money. There were online advertising companies built and that made $30 to $50 million in 3 months, and then just went under after it changed it. But that's just the power that that kind of social proof can do.
Well, I think about like Basecamp. They put out a blog post or a study where they talked about the different landing pages they used for Basecamp, and the ones with just people on them did the best. And just regular people, regular users, big, huge photos as the background. And so how much even more powerful if you know the person personally that you're being pulled into it. That's a great idea. And one of the ways you kind of put this is, like you said, we're not all building a Facebook app that has a brand that we need to break into smaller apps. That was your play, but a lot of us don't have that play. But we can use user-generated content to almost do the same thing, right? So how do we use user-generated content to kind of imitate this idea?
I'll give you a great example, and that is Meetup.com, for instance, right? I was recently giving a talk in New York that was hosted by my friend's growth hacking agency, GrowHack, and I asked the crowd, how many of you are frequent users of Meetup? Maybe half of them raised their hands. Then I asked them, how many of you just joined Meetup to attend this Meetup? And the other half went up. So Meetup.com is using user-generated content in the form of new meetups to drive people to their product. It's the same thing with marketplaces like Udemy. Course creators create content, and that content gets people into the product. Same with Kickstarter, CrowdTilt. Basically, just leveraging. I mean, those are honestly like great companies to build, because in a lot of ways, once you get critical mass, like, growth is not the biggest issue you have. I mean, you obviously want to optimize it, retain users, but just the acquisition piece, you have a lot of people very vested in acquiring users on your behalf.
Yeah. So for the people, watching and listening, really think through what kind of content can you get users to generate on your behalf that would serve as yet another entry point into your product. Maybe it's SEO friendly content, maybe it's content that's just valuable and gets shared. I mean, for whatever reason, they get to that content, and then all of a sudden you have a marketing machine that's being built for you, not by you.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think the easiest way is if you have a product where users can in some way, shape, or form make money or have a business advantage to the content they build on you.
Because then they're going to actually bring in people. It's going to be in their interest to even maybe buy ads and actually spend money and do whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Now, this last one I love. It's something you call the Pac-Man story. So what's the Pac-Man story?
Well, I'll tell you the story first and then kind of go into the higher level thesis. But we were running what I flatteringly would call the first iteration of social gaming, but really it was just flash games with like Facebook leaderboards. And one of them was a Pac-Man based game. Sorry, Nan, like definitely don't have rights to that, but I think we called it something similar. But I mean, the game engine was very, very similar. And sometimes you get so caught up kind of trying to test micro optimizations and small things that during one of our brainstorming sessions, we're just like, you know what, let's just try something ridiculous. And I thought about how cool it would be to like have an actual Pac-Man machine sent to someone. So I investigated feasibility. I was like, it's $2,000. I mean, that's, you spend that much on ads sometimes in a day, right? And I was like, how about we actually run a contest for referrals and send a Pac-Man machine to the person that has the most referrals? And that did something that kind of definitely hit a nerve that, an iPad would not have. I mean, these are people that clearly like the game. And it's so ridiculous having a company send you a giant ass arcade machine to your door, right?
That's awesome.
And it definitely struck, it definitely hit. As soon as it hit, we knew it started working really well. The other innovative thing we were doing then is Facebook banned incentivizing all their communication channels. It was a very hard ban. You could not incentivize it. So what we did is we generated referral links, which
so like put them on the wall, right?
Like old school referral links, right? Yeah, like way back with like a referral ID and stuff. And that way we're not liable for people like sharing it everywhere.
Because it's not one of their channels, it's people
putting it on their channels.
wall.
On their wall, exactly.
I gotcha.
And that created an army of people going to like associated groups, pages, because they didn't post it on their wall. Like the guys that wanted to win, they went to groups, they went to pages.
They wanted the machine.
They wanted the machine. And again, we got fortunate in the sense that two people got really close to each other and they ended up in this crazy war against themselves, culminating in them buying traffic for their referral link for my application.
They were buying traffic for the referral link to win a Pac-Man machine. And they're buying traffic for you.
Precisely. That worked out absurdly well. Like, replicating it is probably not going to work out that well. But yeah, it was just higher level. It was just trying like ridiculous shit. Like like too much of growth, I think, gets caught up in the numbers and optimizing, like A/B testing, landing pages, all that good stuff. I mean, I'm as quantitative as anyone, but sometimes you gotta like just say fuck it and try shit. You know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the stuff that'll probably bring you the biggest wins cannot be A/B tested. Like, I really believe that. Actually, we just built our community on Growth Hacker TV, and in the community, a discussion was started about A/B testing and how much we've A/B tested Growth Hacker TV. And I said, honestly, not much, because I'm too busy building an entire community, which I knew was going to be a huge win. So I could A/B test headlines, or I could just build awesome features. And when I run out of awesome features, then I'll start A/B testing the little stuff. But I'm not there yet. I don't need to be there yet. And the stuff I'm doing is winning, So there's a big point there. Micro optimization, there's a time and a place. But macro optimization is just trying awesome stuff and seeing what happens.
And it's more fun too. And when you think about why you do what you do, like it's so much more fun just to try stuff than stress out too much about increasing your click-through rate by 1% or whatever.
Yeah, the big stuff is fun. Now, looking back at your 10,000 apps, what's the most viral concept you ever worked on? I'm just kind of interested personally because you've seen a lot. Like, what was the thing that just you sat back and you're like, what happened? That's crazy.
Yep. I think we soon realized we definitely hit a sweet spot with teenagers worldwide, which probably informs the next part of this. And so at the time, our bread and butter were friend quizzes. You answered questions about your friends. And you, in order to unlock your answer, you had to either pay a little bit of money, take an offer, or answer more questions. But that was doing really well, but it reached a point where everyone, and I mean everyone, tried adding the same engine. Like dating apps, like Zoosk and Badoo were doing it, like social interview. There were entire startups like Friendly and what's the other one? I mean, there's a bunch of, like everyone started doing this, and it reached a point where we're still the best, but we're losing some of our magic. So then, we thought about the kind of demographic we had, and I was like, okay, let's try a version of this application where you choose the best profile picture people have out of their friend's profile picture album. So it was like vanity to the max. You get a notification saying Bronson chose what profile picture he thinks you should have.
Of course I'm going to click on it,
Yeah, and that was bizarre. Like, we started having applications shut down. They're just like, nothing can grow this fast. And it reached a point where we're like, okay, we need to artificially slow this down.
So you were getting shut down because you were hitting limits that people didn't think you could hit in their algorithm.
Yep, exactly. And we were artificially shutting it down, and it reached a point where our first step to artificially shut it down was every 20 questions show a big ass like interstitial ad and have people, so the idea being a lot of people click on that ad, we'd make money as well as artificially slow down. But that was not enough. We tried it at 16 questions. We tried it at 12 questions. Finally, we realized we could grow sustainably by showing a full page ad every 4 questions.
That's crazy. So 25% of the experience was crap on purpose. And you made money both ways.
Yep, absolutely.
That's great. I mean, I guess the insight there is the human ego knows no bounds, right?
Yep. And again, I mean, at the higher level, it's just trying different stuff. I mean, imitation has its place, but just try things.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And like I said, the 5 things we talked about, a lot of people are not going to apply this to Facebook because I think in a lot of ways that ship has sailed, but they can apply it to so many things they're working on. And a lot of the great hacks, they have a psychological base that's more powerful than the actual thing that was implemented. And that psychological base can be carried over from now for the next 100 years. It doesn't matter.
Yep. Highly recommend Influence to anyone that hasn't read it already.
Yeah, that's great. And
that definitely...
What was the author on that one? Do you remember?
think it's a professor from ASU. I can't remember his name.
Yeah, if you Google it, they'll find it. And we'll have a
Robert,
note
Dr.
section people can
Robert
type it into.
something. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
don't worry about it.
you can put up your.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what do you think the next big viral channel is? Do you have any insight on maybe what's around the corner that we should be looking out for?
Dude, I can't tell you how many times I hear this question. Like, this is literally the one question I get.
It's a $1 million question.
Yeah, it's a $1 million question.
Matters.
And frankly, I think the first thing to think about is there might never be anything like the Facebook platform again. Like, that was actually just a lot of good things happening at the right time. I mean, no company is going to open up access like that anytime in the near future. Mm-hmm. But with that said, I think the important thing to do is start thinking about how anything can be a viral channel. I mean, the way I look at it is, depending on what vertical you're in, think about what other products exist in your vertical and how you can somehow leverage their audience, right? Mm-hmm. People always talk about Airbnb and Craigslist, but I think that's what it comes down to. I mean, you have to find literally any company. Even, whenever you keep up with news, you're like, okay, Coursera now has 4 million users. Okay, if I'm building an online education company, what can I do to get some of those users?
Absolutely.
And for instance, there's a company called Study Room. What they started doing is they created referral links that they encourage people to post in their Coursera classes to build a community around specific Coursera classes, right? Mm-hmm. So at that point, you maybe even build a feature in your product around a large company or a large website that already has millions of users that you could somehow borrow.
Yeah. Well, in essence, that's what you were doing on Facebook, just at such a high scale, it didn't feel like it, but you were leveraging Facebook's audience. They captured a bunch of people, 1 billion people, and then you were leveraging that. But we can do it on smaller scales all the time. It's LOPA, L-O-P-A, leverage other people's audiences. And if you just make that a mantra, you'll grow. I mean, you mentioned Meetup earlier. When we were first trying to get Growth Hacker TV off the ground, I went to meetup.com, found all the organizers, sent them accounts, sent them promo codes, incentivize them to share it with their people. It's like they already have these groups. I'm going to tap into them somehow. And I've been thinking that way from day one. And now I'm not doing Meetup anymore, but I'm doing every day. Like, who has an audience? How can I leverage it? Who has an audience? How can I leverage it?
Absolutely. The other kind of growth hack or viral channel that I think is massively underrated, and it's almost counterintuitive because we're dealing with high technology, being really sophisticated, but something that I think helps a lot in growth, particularly when it comes to like enterprise and things that are hard to growth, is literally brute force, man. Like just having assistants, interns, whatever. Just when it comes to business development and stuff, brute force might be the best and most sustainable growth hack there is.
Yeah, consumer-facing products, they can get a viral coefficient to actually make it truly viral. If you're charging money up front, it's probably not going to go viral, but it's still a business. It's still legit. I mean, that's what we are. And so sometimes brute force can do some great things in that kind of world. I mean, we have VAs right now, hammering away, doing their thing, just brute forcing some hacks for us because it's how SaaS works in a lot of ways.
Yep.
No, that's awesome. Now let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about mobile app distribution. It's very different than Facebook, isn't it? I mean, I don't even know if there's much carryover from what we talked about. The psychology's there, but in terms of the technology,
it's a whole new game.
It's a whole new game. It's different.
I realize. I mean, I sucked on mobile for the first few months, and it's still such a different platform that there's almost nothing in common. I think the big high level difference, and this is something to consider when you design a mobile application, is most growth on mobile still happens in the real world. It still happens with ideas and concepts that are cool. It's still people telling their friends to download this. It's still, kind of what made things grow 50 years ago. It's not specific viral channels. Yeah. And I think that's kind of a fundamental difference.
I thought about that a lot because with the computer, you're at a desk, you're in your home, you're somewhere maybe not in a social setting, but your phone is everywhere. Your phone's at the party. Your phone is at dinner. Your phone is, in bed with you at night. Like, so you can share an app because it is literally with you 24 hours a day. So that means it's not necessarily a knock against it that word of mouth is so powerful. It's just the nature that now it's actually a part of you and you have your own voice. So you can tell people about it while you're with it.
Absolutely. That is one factor. I think the other factor is there's no killer communication channel for getting people to download new applications.
Yeah.
Like, there are communication
is so hard.
Exactly. There's no killer communication channel to enable that.
Yeah. Well, right now, the only channel we really have outside of word of mouth is the App Store, right? I mean, that's kind of it.
Yep, the App Store is all you have, and which is why most of what I teach is just, milking the App Store for what it's worth.
Yeah.
With that said, I mean, it's different from Facebook. I mean, you can milk the App Store for what it's worth, but that doesn't mean you can use my strategies and get a top 5 rank. Like, there's a lot more with the mobile application, including kind of just the basic stuff, like how many people see this and go like, wow, that's a cool idea.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's no replacement for just having a product that matters. I
Yep.
mean, you can't hack, stuff that just is not
Yep.
meaningful. But let's talk about some of the things. If the app stores are so important, it's going to be important to know the ins and outs of the app stores. So, what are some of the differences between, let's say, the iOS App Store and the Google Play Store? Are they the exact same, or are there things there that make them different plays?
Completely different platforms. And I think that's App Store Optimization 101.
Okay.
Apple is actually surprisingly unsophisticated, and I don't know
Really?
why it is. And again, this is something I've confirmed with data, and it's something that evolves all the time. So it could have changed in the last 3 months when I last tested this. But 3 months ago, they definitely were relatively unsophisticated, where the biggest indicator of rankings and success was straight up your download velocity, like how fast you can get
Really?
downloads.
So not necessarily total downloads, but velocity, which is different.
Yep. Total downloads with that said, total downloads isn't that important on either platform. But
Okay.
Google has a bunch of other algorithmic indicators. I mean, clearly they're a search company. And like most
It's
things,
what they do.
high level, I also think as a company, they tend to overthink so much stuff. And that's clearly evident in Android, because even though you can tell they've put in so much more effort into filtering, sorting, blah, 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 as a user, I don't find a massive difference between, the discovery engine on either.
Yeah.
But Google has like a really sophisticated, I guess the other reason is Google also does not really have an approval process, so they have to have firmer measures in place.
Yeah.
But on Google, obviously velocity matters, but something as simple as having a large percentage of people uninstall your application can kill it. Your velocity can be rendered entirely useless.
Okay.
Google also cares about things like how old the application is, which is interesting because this is counterintuitive. I've not heard anyone bring it up, but I've tested it enough to know that it's definitely a thing.
Yeah.
Like the age of your application matters a lot when you're promoting it, with older applications performing better.
Yeah. I was going to say it's probably a carryover from SEO optimization. They know old websites have more juice.
Actually,
in them.
I mean, I didn't think about that. That makes complete logical sense. That might be one of the reasons. Yeah, old keys work a lot better. Reviews matter with Google. So Google is basically just trying to put together a quality score based on how good they think your application is.
So they're kind of using everything. They're using velocity. They're using total downloads a little bit. They're using uninstalls. They're using the keywords in your description. All those things.
Yep.
On iOS, are they just
they're using,
not?
I even forgot the other thing. They're using keyword density.
Well, it's kind of so obvious. If people don't know that, don't even watch Growth Hacker TV. You have to put words in the descriptions that are, gonna, key them into you, be unique to some degree, et cetera, et cetera. On iOS, did they not use those signals? I mean, is that kind of what you found out?
Almost entirely disregarded. I mean, Apple uses the keywords you specify for your application, because you can specify keywords, as well as obviously having it in your application title, which is a huge indicator. I mean, for most searches, it's whether it's in your title or not. And then it's velocity that primarily dictates what goes in the ranking charts.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess there's two elements to it, right? One is how they choose applications to show up in the ranking charts, the top 25, top whatever. And the other is how they filter it for search.
I gotcha. Can you optimize for both, or do you have to really pick one and just run after it?
You can definitely optimize for both. There's search is kind of a constant optimization that keeps giving you small returns. But ultimately, I mean, if you're playing in the big leagues and you have something that you want to make a large company, you have to start thinking about top 25 overall.
I gotcha. That's really the way to break in, right?
I mean, it's not going to be cheap, but it's probably the cheapest way to know if you have a viable business or not.
Yeah, no, that's great. And one idea that I would, encourage people to try is based on our kind of insight that maybe Google is using all their knowledge of search engine and SEO and that kind of thing to inform their store, their Play Store. Think through what you know as SEO, and then just imagine how would Google apply it to the store, and let me see how I can engineer something to rise in the ranks. And you might have, something on your hands there.
Absolutely. The one thing to add is whatever you do on an Android application, just ensure that not too many people are uninstalling it. I've seen too many applications that just die. Like, it kills your campaign. It's such a waste. And this becomes very important when you think about media buying.
Yeah.
Because on the iOS App Store, it makes sense to buy lots of low quality traffic. It doesn't hurt you that much. But you buy lots of low quality traffic on Google, it's a net negative.
Yeah. No, I didn't even think about that. That's great. Now, what about reviews? Is that a part of the algorithms on either store? The number of reviews, the rank of the reviews? How does that play in?
I mean, everything like Apple puts out in PR and stuff would lead you to believe that it matters, but in my data, it just hasn't really mattered beyond like you looking at it and being like, wow, this has 1 star, like screw this. But on Google, it definitely, like, Apple acquired Chomp, and I mean, I know they plan to, start using reviews better, but on Google, it definitely matters. And it's one of those things that I think it's easy enough to hack that, I mean, if you have a decent application, you should at least have 4 stars. Like, there's enough ways of going about it and being smart about it that you should be able to at least have a 4-star application. Yeah,
which is really important for Android, and might be important eventually for iOS as well.
Yep.
No, that's great.
And it's one of those things that when you think about it, it's really not hard to do. One of the strategies we've used that has been very successful in getting us lots of positive reviews is, again, this comes back to influence, where doctor or whatever talks about how people generally like to stay congruent to what they say. And what we do is we pop up a message that says, do you love this application? And if they say no, we say, oh, we're sorry, like, let us know what we can do better. But if they say yes, it'll be like, wow, great, we'd really appreciate it if you could give us a review, and then send them a link to the review page. So that works really well because it segregates your users out into people that like your application and people that don't. And it only takes reviews from people that do like your application. So you're like, it's a great legal way of always getting really highly reviewed applications.
Yeah. I think I just remembered his name, Caldini, Influence.
That's my boy.
That's him right there. And he actually has 6 pieces of psychology he says to focus on. Congruency is one of them. Scarcity, one that we already mentioned. And I would really recommend people Google right now Caldini 6 psychological tips or something like that. All 6 of them are incredible and should be baked into everything you do at some level.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I was actually just reading them this morning, I think. I was just looking over them again, just a refresher, making sure that I'm, got my chops down.
It's a surprisingly readable book, too. Like, it was a fun read.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, one of the things you've talked about before is something called horizontal distribution in the app stores. What do you mean by that? What's a way to think about horizontal distribution?
Okay, horizontal distribution is kind of going back to what we talked about on Facebook when we separated our applications. It's a strategy I've applied on the App Store, and it's one of the few tactics that I've seen actually produce real results. The logic behind it is super simple. From a search perspective, the most important thing are the keywords in your title. And the more applications you have, the more application titles you have. So it's a very logical way of increasing your mobile footprint.
Yeah.
I think Udemy is a great example of how they do this. They don't have too much discovery coming from the App Store. I mean, people are not going to accidentally find Udemy unless they've intended to find Udemy, right? They're not going to win on any keywords. So what they did is they, with permission of the course creators, broke out a few hundred courses into their own independent applications. So they now start competing for titles like Learn HTML or Learn JavaScript, Salsa dancing, whatever. They're competitive on so many more keywords than they otherwise would be.
Yeah. No, that's great. It just comes back to multiple points of entry, user-generated content, not a big brand, but many brands that can be found in a lot of different ways. It's like we said, it worked on Facebook, and it's not going to work the same way, but the idea is the same. Just allow people to find it the way they're going to find it, and then you end up with growth.
Like, take advantage of the fact that search is so powerful and see how you can hit the most number of keywords.
Yeah.
And I mean, I actually discovered this in what was a really fun experiment that it got shut down eventually, but we built an entirely algorithmic way of launching new applications. So we scraped Wikiquote, which we're legally allowed to do, and built 100 and something smart applications based on TV shows where it would show you a quote by a random character and you could guess who said it. So it was kind of like a stupid randomly generated application. We launched 100 and something of them algorithmically. And that was absurd. I mean, that was like Facebook levels of growth on mobile. So definitely got shut down soon after. Google claimed that it was in violation of TV shows copyright, which, I mean, legally isn't an issue because it comes under the Fair Use Act.
Yeah.
But
They just didn't like
either
the
way,
automated system.
yeah,
That's
they
what they
didn't like the automated system. And it was funny because 3 days after that, they changed their policies about automated systems, and they sent out an email to it and just pretended it was completely coincidental.
Yeah, right. Sure it was.
Yeah.
This has been great, Ankur. I have one last question for you. What's the best advice that you have for any startup that's trying to grow? What would you tell them?
So the one thing I see a lot is so many companies die because of a lack of growth. Like, I would argue that's probably the biggest reason companies die, either that or, not getting along with your co-founders. And at the same time, I see so many people hesitant of being aggressive. And if the one kind of higher level maxim that I've always stuck to in the context of growth is it's always easier to ask for forgiveness and permission. Like, sometimes if you're a startup founder, chances are, like, you're kind of have a little bit of a gambling instinct. Go with it. You are in a very low probability game, and it's all about taking calculated risks.
Yeah.
And considering the biggest reason your company will die is the fact that it doesn't grow, when it comes to growth, just try stuff. Like, take risks, push the boundaries. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying get into trouble, get banned from the App Store. Like, there's a balance, but be aggressive.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, the way I see it, there's ethical lines you don't want to cross.
Yep,
there's legal
absolutely.
lines you don't want to cross. And there's a lot of other just social constructs. Cross them. If it's not unethical
Absolutely.
and it's not illegal, cross them,
Absolutely.
see what happens, and see if you can grow your startup or die.
Yep,
It's your choice, right?
Absolutely, right? Yeah, and I think the ethical thing is important. If it's something that you wouldn't tell your parents, you probably don't want to do that. But if it's something your parents don't understand and they're like, oh, yeah, I guess it's fine, yep, do it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
No, this has been great, Ankur. I mean, there's been so many, things we've covered. I think people are going to get a lot out of this interview. And just thank you so much for taking the time to come on Growth Hacker TV.
Yeah, no, it's been fun, man.